Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating a vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today's guest is Sahib Patheja. How you doing today, Sahib?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. First off, welcome to the show. Obviously, we're looking forward to hearing about you and your story and your journey. I've obviously read over your bio. Definitely some amazing things that we're looking to, gather from you today. If for the first thing I want to kind of get to is just tell us a little bit about yourself. Saib, where you're from. I know that you're located right now currently in Atlanta, Georgia, if that's correct. But where are you originally from, and how did you make that journey over to to Atlanta?
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. My name is Sahib Patheja. Originally from Calcutta, India. My entire family is from India. Mom, dad, my brother as well. I have an older brother who's about 4 years older than me. My dad's side of the family is all from Calcutta. My mom, though, as well. They're from Bombay, India. And we moved here as our family of four moved here back in 1992. And I was just 3 years old, have been in Atlanta or really the suburbs of Atlanta ever since then.
Okay. Now, how was the transition, the culture of being in Atlanta? Like, how is it now for you?
How is it now for me? So it's interesting. Now I live in downtown Atlanta, married with one daughter at home. And so my experience now is, quite different from what it was in my younger days. Basically, living in downtown specifically, it's a very diverse area that I find myself in, with, obviously kind of white and black American people, but then even internationally, there's a large Latin American presence here. There's quite a large Indian and Eastern Asian population as well. Growing up, kind of in the southern part of Atlanta, more in the suburbs, there it was likely a little bit less diverse. And just being younger in general, my experience was fairly different, I would say, just depending upon, I guess, how old I was and what part of Atlanta I was in as well.
Okay. Now, you mentioned a key word.
Yeah.
The main thing I was trying to grab from you right there was just the point of it being diverse, being in that area and being around that diverse community. So what does diversity mean to you, and how is important it to be to involve that within your life?
Yeah. So diversity to me is really kind of the mix of different cultures, races, and genders, kind of all together. I think it fosters a greater sense of learning, if you will. Learning may not be the right word to use there, but having had the opportunity to go to school here and kind of expose myself to different groups of people, generally, right, in a diverse environment, you're exposed to different thought processes, different ideas, different cultures, all of which together kind of influence my experience day to day, down from, the food I eat to maybe to a lesser extent the clothes I wear, but even through to the way I talk and the media I consume. I would say that's all kind of changed based on my exposure to different people, different cultures, throughout my time in Atlanta.
Mhm. And I bring that up because I'm from the South Bronx myself, and I know obviously South Bronx kind of has that same type of melting pot where you're involved and engulfed in so many different cultures and so many different things that will help inspire you and influence you. Now, I know obviously you have kind of embarked on a whole IT journey did that being a part of Atlanta and that culture, did it inspire you to join into the IT industry to get in to move forward into that, or was that something that growing up IT has always been something that you've always interested you?
No, so I actually work on the business side of IT, more along IT sales. Um, and I actually went to school for business, but not in the sales context. I went to school for finance.
Mhm,
Graduated from the University of Georgia with a degree in finance. And my career plan, at least initially, was to pursue a career within finance, specifically real estate finance. My father, he kind of runs and operates a property management company that started as just
mhm,
a single business that he owned. Him and a group of my uncles partnered together, invested in a convenience store that they slowly expanded into additional convenience stores and gas stations, and even a few restaurants and small, not office buildings but retail spaces.
mhm,
um, and so it kind of organically grew into a formal property management firm where my father owned and operated one of the convenience stores but then leased out the rest of the properties. um, and my original plan, really, my dad did that, like I said, all organically. Coming over from India, he had really no formal business education.
mhm. So
Um,
no college background. Your father.
no, he went to college in India, never graduated, worked in the family business there. Um, and my dad just kind of, the way he describes it, he always just had a desire to move to the US. Um, Obviously there were some other financial goals and implications there. Um, but the way my dad's described it to me, my family wasn't necessarily experiencing much hardship in India, but it was just always a dream of my father's. And
Mhm,
so when he moved here, he partnered with a couple of my uncles who happened to already be here in the States. Outside of just a few uncles and aunts, the majority of our family is back in India. And so, this was something that he kind of grew from the ground up with limited education, is probably a better way to put it. Um,
mhm,
and I was initially planning to kind of work with him as well as my brother, and kind of add that level of formality, let's say, to um, my dad's property management company. But once I graduated from the University of Georgia, my brother was actually already working with my father. My brother went through a very similar path. He went to the University of Georgia as well, just before me. He was already working with my dad. The business was going very well. Um, and honestly, I can't even remember it because I don't want it to sound like it was any sort of disagreement with my family and I. But we kind of collectively came to the decision that I would pursue my own opportunities. Honestly, after having gone through school, that was kind of my goal, if you will, anyway. Um, and
mhm.
so that's when I started kind of pursuing other opportunities.
Okay.
Um, and I never really had planned to join any IT company, even IT sales, the business side of it, like I described previously. I don't want to say it fell
Yes.
into my lap, but a few of the friends I met, I had while I was at UGA, they kind of referred me into the company. And even when I joined, honestly, it was really just I needed a job, and so I took the interview. I was offered the position. I accepted the position, really thinking it would be something I did short term while I found something along the lines of finance. But after I joined and I stuck around for maybe 6 months, 8 months, I really started to enjoy it. I started to see the potential of IT sales, and what started as a job has kind of naturally evolved into my career.
Okay. Well, congratulations on that, on climbing that ladder. You mentioned some key things, and one of the things I want to kind of peel back and go and talk about is that experience. Like, I want to know a little bit more about that experience of watching your father come from India and build something from the ground up. Not knowing if it was going to work, not having a significant amount
Yeah.
of resources. How'd you feel? Like, how was that? Like, could you explain that experience of growing up? Obviously your father is an inspiration in your life, and obviously his work, his work ethic obviously has kind of like seeped into you as well too. But like, how was that experience growing up and seeing him building something from the ground up, being an immigrant coming into the States?
Yeah, and this is an interesting one because I was very young, of course. But even as my earliest memories here in Atlanta or the suburbs of Atlanta, when we moved over, we actually lived in a small town just outside of Atlanta called Riverdale, Georgia. And we lived in an apartment complex, a small 2-bedroom apartment where me and my brother kind of shared a bed. And my father's convenience store was walking distance, just a couple of blocks down the street. And so, my earliest memories would really be me and my brother hanging out. My brother was 4 years older than me, so he was 7 when we moved here. Um, and my dad worked like crazy. I mean, I'm sure this is true of so many immigrants that come over to the US. I mean, it was to the point where my dad would be gone for work. By the time my brother and I got up for school, my mom would help us get prepared for school. She'd ship us off. Then she would go join my dad at the store as well. Um, and my mom would take care of us after school, and my dad would come home after we were already asleep. So there was a period of time where we didn't even really see my dad. He would tell us stories years later that he would actually come into our bedroom after we were asleep, and just kind of hang out with us for a minute or two, or just kind of sit there while we were asleep so he could at least be with us. My mom even would take us into the store after school, maybe for half an hour, just to see our dad. Um, and I had mentioned earlier, right? My family didn't necessarily have a lot of financial strain or hardships when we were back in India, but it was really just a desire of my father's to always come and set up a life here in the U.S. And I think because of that, um, my dad had really an extra chip on his shoulder. Like there was no need for him to necessarily come to the U.S. We had a fairly comfortable life back in India. Um, and I think, my dad's never even actually admitted this fully, but I think my dad, really wanted to kind of prove that he made the correct decision, that he could be successful on his own here in the U.S. Um, and that's really kind of what drove him to work as hard as he did.
Hmm.
And it was quite a while. It took, a solid, maybe from the time I was 3 and even before I started school, um, until I was in, the first or second grade. So probably a period of 4 or 5 years before, things really stabilized for my dad, and he was, maybe able to normalize his schedule a bit, grow the business to a point where, it was maybe less reliant on him specifically. But even today, as an old man, my dad is still an insanely hard worker, who, if and when it's needed, he puts on his boots and he'll work any hours of the day just based on the needs of the business.
Wow. 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 Congratulations. I mean, you sound like you have an amazing, amazing support staff between mom and dad. I mean, just that story alone of just how they would kind of transition, having your father by your bedside, sitting there, with you guys. It's an amazing thing to kind of like, think about, to even with him being so with the mindset of like, I need to make this, I need to make it work. Do you feel like that right there has inspired you within, your corporate lifestyle? Do you feel like that mindset that your father has kind of like implemented or kind of, passed on to you? Do you feel like you have utilized that same mindset to kind of push you through and to climbing up that ladder in corporate America?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my dad's always preached, work hard and apply yourself. He wouldn't really accept um, any sort of excuse when it came to your schoolwork or any work that was expected of you outside of that. Um, and that was really just ingrained in us, from a very young age. My father expected near perfection in terms of schoolwork. And like I said, if there were any other jobs, tasks, even just chores around the house, um, he was a fairly stern individual as well. And so, me and my brother knew, um, we knew we had to get it done, or there would be some sort of punishment from him, my mom. Even if I had other family in town, my grandparents, my aunts, uncles, they would definitely let us hear about it if they saw anything but 100% effort and hard work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, it's paid off a significant amount. Now, could you talk to me a little bit more about some of the struggles that you face? Obviously having a family, um, coming from India over to America, you obviously went to a very distinguished university, and now you went into corporate America. Could you explain some of the struggles, or think back to a struggle that took place in corporate America as you were going, in which you've maybe felt like diversity probably played a part in that, or just a cultural difference played a part in that? Could you explain something?
Yeah, that's interesting. I would say it affected my school much more so than it did my corporate life. I say that just because now, at least in the company that I work, N3, we're a global company. It's again because we're a global sales and marketing firm, and actually even just from Atlanta, as well as we have quite a few other offices globally. But Atlanta is kind of the hub for obviously our U.S. operations. But we even do significant business throughout Latin America and the western portion of Europe, out of Atlanta. Then we have offices in London, Dublin, and as far east as Singapore and Sydney, Australia. And so um, the work culture is has it has always been very diverse and accepting of different cultures, languages. And so, at least in the context of N3, when I joined N3, I don't think there have been any challenges along those lines. But definitely, as I was growing up, right, going through school, elementary school, middle school, high school, right, children are definitely a little bit less accepting and understanding of anyone who's different, really. And so I experienced it quite a bit at that level. I was even, myself personally, I would say I was even a little bit fortunate to have an older brother. My older brother definitely had it worse than I did. My being from India, my religion, Sikhism, we by practice keep our hair long. We keep it covered, as kind of a part of our uniform, if you will. I wear a turban, and so growing up as a child, right, that was definitely um, made me stick out like a sore thumb. It was something that my classmates would poke fun about. I said it was even worse for my brother because he went to school. He's basically 4 years older than me. Um, and so by the time I got into elementary school, he was just getting into middle school. By the time I got to middle school, he was getting into high school. And by the time I got to high school, he was off to college. And so, really, prior to my brother, there was no other Sikh family right in the area, or
Mm,
there certainly weren't any other Sikh students in the area or in our schools. So
wow.
my brother was the first one. And
Wow.
it really came down to, I say it was even worse for him because he got picked on, by his kids, by his classmates, even the school itself, right? Because we're wearing a turban, and it really was a lack of awareness. I think now it could have been maybe something a little bit more sinister at play, but I suspect it was just a lack of awareness. They would consider it a hat, and really cite the hat policy to remove in class. Or even as we got a little bit older, my brother and I both played competitive soccer, throughout high school. And even in matches, it would become an issue with certain referees or certain schools we would visit, who, again, I thought it was because of a lack of awareness um, around the religion and around the practice, that they would ask that it be removed, sometimes persistently, to the point where I would either have to get some sort of documentation,
Wow.
um,
Wow.
or even have my coach or teachers or principals kind of talk to why we wear this, and why it is allowed. And so um, my brother, like I said, he had to go through all of that firsthand, in addition to just the teasing and kind of comments that would be made by other kids and classmates. By the time I went through it, luckily, all of my teachers taught my brother just a couple of years ago. Um,
That would definitely.
and they had a good experience with my brother, which definitely kind of shined through to me.
It shows that, like, obviously through that hardship, that time in your brother's life, and obviously you going through it as well too, and seeing it, you guys still maintain to stay positive and still promote your culture, your heritage. You guys are very proud. Was there a moment in time where you felt proud about your heritage and about your culture? I know that obviously people kind of shunned it, or made fun of it, or tried to to belittle it at some points in time when you were coming up as a
Yeah.
as a young man. Was there a moment in time where you were like, I'm proud, like this is me, like I'm owning up to this?
Oh, for sure. Honestly, there were the opposite is true as well, right? Like, I can recall times when I was in elementary school, specifically, I was very young, where I had gotten picked on, and I didn't feel like I was accepted, by my classmates. Um, that I can recall going to my parents and asking them, why do we do this? And, asking them why my name is different, why I look different. Um, and the memory of the whole interaction is even a little bit fuzzy. I can't even fully recall how my parents kind of talked me off the ledge then. But I do remember having those thoughts, right, multiple times as a young kid, for sure. But as I grew just a little bit older, I would say by the time I got into middle school, certainly by high school, it became a part of my identity, right? It was who I was. It shaped my experience, and my experience kind of shaped my mindset and my attitude towards everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I can't even think to like the specific moment where the light bulb went off, or where I kind of turned my attitude into embracing it. Um, but it is something that, as I learned more about my religion, my people, and as I kind of got a little bit older and I could understand different perspectives and what was going on in the world just a little bit more, it did help me gain an appreciation for my religion and my faith. Um, which, again, like looking back at it now, I couldn't even imagine not having it. Like, I'm not even an overly religious person overall. But the fact that my religion is so visible, it shaped who I am. And if I had to repeat my life without the turban, I know it would be drastically different. And I'm very happy, with where I am today, and the family I've had, the success I've had in my professional career. And so it's certainly not something I would change. And it is something that I value today
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit.
Wow. Wow. And then obviously you pass it on to your children. You pass it on to, your cousins, your nephews, your nieces. It's, your father set, he basically started that ripple, right? Because coming over from India, I could just imagine the amount of, at the time he came over, I could imagine the amount of, you know, struggles he had to go to, then your brother going through that struggle, and then yourself obviously going through that struggle and seeing those struggles, it just speaks volumes to the family that you guys do have and how you guys were able to fight through that. I know that something I just to kind of go back into that corporate lifestyle that you are in right now. I know that is a big emphasis on DI in major corporations now. Like, what is your take on that?
So diversity and inclusion just in the workplace, right? To me, I've always valued that diversity because I'm different myself, right? That's definitely a part of it. And because I have this different perspective, right? Growing up in India, or not necessarily not growing up in India, excuse me, getting born in India, but growing up in that culture, right? So even when we moved here to the US, when I got home, my family spoke, a blend, maybe 50-50, probably more like 60-40 Punjabi, which is the language of my religion, as well as English. Obviously, we ate Indian food. My mom, watches Indian TV and movies. And so at home, I experienced, that aspect of Indian culture. But when I went off to school, if I interacted with my friends, obviously I'm experiencing the American culture. And I always grew up with this understanding and kind of this understanding of both cultures and this blended lifestyle, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's ingrained in me, right? And it's to the point where um, I even just feel more comfortable in diverse environments. It's hard to necessarily even pinpoint why. I guess I feel more included um, in a room of mixed cultures versus, any sort of domination to one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so in the professional context, that's important as well, honestly. Like, I just feel more comfortable there, number one. Beyond that, I think it really shows a commitment from the company's perspective, right, to foster that environment. And I think of it as, as employers, kind of similar to even how a college or university would do things, right? You want to attract the best of the best to your place of work or to your school or university. And you want to foster an environment of growth, right? And people want to work where they can grow, where they have the opportunity to grow both professionally and personally. Um, and I think a diverse environment fosters that growth, right? It allows you to expand and learn more about different people, different cultures, different styles, even, which, may seem personal on the surface, but definitely can bleed into the way you work and the way you do business. Um, so I think it's important from that perspective, for our company specifically. And three, like I said, we're a global company. We do business literally across the globe. I can recall working with customers, um, throughout the western portion of Europe, definitely throughout the U.S. and Canada. Which even if you look in the U.S. and in Canada, even there, region to region, you're going to get different styles, different cultures, north, south, east, west Canada. You have kind of the English Canada, you have French Canada, and so with N3, it's really interesting because you're exposed to all sorts of different cultures and peoples um, on day one. Just walking through the sales floor, you'll see it. And so with N3, it's been interesting, right? I don't even know if it's something the company really does explicitly or something that's developed naturally.
It is a
It is
blessing.
an environment though that I
Yeah.
enjoy working in.
It is really good to be a part of a community like that. From your story, from your father's story, your brother's story, your story. Being able to find a community of a community in which you could grow with, in which you feel accepted. Because that's been something as a struggle within your you coming up, your upbringing, just finding that place to fit in. So to know that you have a company like that, and you have a community. My last question to you, because I know we're getting ready to wrap up on this interview, this lovely interview. You shared some amazing stuff, in which I know the listeners are going to be very appreciative of hearing that. What is next for you? Like, what is the last question I would ask is like, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? I'm saying you have, from just coming from the family, from going into Atlanta to graduate into now into corporate America to having the family, like what is that next within the 5 years? What do you see yourself doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was actually, it's interesting. I was very recently promoted within work. I'm now vice president of program delivery within N3, and that was just a month ago, not even a month ago. And so the answer to that question is it has changed. In fact, it's evolving now with this new role. Prior to the promotion, um, I've been with N3 for so long, right? And it doesn't even feel that long, but when I say it out loud, 9 years um, sounds like a really long time to me. It's certainly the longest I've been with any company by far. Longer than I've been with even any individual school or any other project, of course. Um, and N3 has opened up tons of doors for me. I started in our entry level position, working in IT sales, and now kind of as the VP of delivery. Um, I don't see myself leaving, but I do see myself kind of growing in my role and continuing to progress further within N3. And so today I focus on kind of a few of our premier clients and work very closely with them. And as a part of my new role, there's an initiative to kind of get me exposure to different clients that we do business with. Um, and that is going to be an experience for sure. Today, I work primarily with one of our clients who's a large IT company, a cloud provider. And so I'll be expanding into kind of other product lines that we do business with, less maybe in the public cloud space, but more in software as a service or even hardware. And so
Congratulations.
for me,
No, go ahead.
yeah, just continuing to grow with the company, really.
Well, congratulations on all that success. I mean, obviously, amazing story, amazing energy in this interview. To the listeners, if you want to hear more stories like Sahib's, check out ZakaConnect.com or follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcast, guys. I'm so impressed by the story and everything that you have kind of talked about, and I'm so blessed to know that you were able to open up and share with the listeners about what's going on and how you inclined up that ladder and the story of your family and stuff like that. So kudos to you and everything that you got going on. It's an amazing story, and all the best in the many more to come. Because I know in the next 5 years, we're looking forward to obviously following your journey and hopefully at some point in time being able to interview you again, if that's possible.
Yes, of course. No, it was fun. I had a great time coming on and chatting with you, and would be happy to reconvene down the line and see how things have progressed.
Okay. Well, thank you again. If you want to hear more about stories like Sahib, check us out at ZakaConnect.com or follow our feed, Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Again, to all the listeners, again, make sure you follow. We look forward to seeing you guys in the near future. And Sahib, thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for having me.